that question and to everyone who sent questions in. We're looking forward to hearing more from you. But just want to start off, first of all, by welcoming everyone and Happy New Year. My name is Shannon, and I'm part of the Community Engagement and Events team at Russell Alexander Collaborative Family Lawyers. I'm going to start with a bit of housekeeping. I'll let you know what's on the agenda for today, and I'll also be introducing our panelists before passing things over to them. We want to first of all thank you very much for joining our team for today's presentation on Divorce Day in Canada with Russell Alexander, Nafisa Nazarelli, and Jason Eisenberg. We're excited to be back here live with you today after a brief holiday break. And to let you know what's on the agenda today, in today's 1 hour presentation, Russell, Nafisa, and Jason will be covering the following topics. What is Divorce Day? The difference between separation and divorce. Counseling services. This can be scary. What happens next? Kitchen table agreements, disclosure, and ILA. And they'll also be offering quick tips on working with your divorce lawyer, tips if you represent yourself in court, the Divorce Act, common law couples, family dispute resolution, ADR mediation and collaborative practice. They'll also be discussing Zoom divorce and offering closing comments. And we will also have a dedicated Q&A segment at the end of the webinar. So if you haven't already, please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to get to your question during the presentation. Just a quick note, we make sure that we'll keep your identities anonymous to other attendees, which is why we've disabled the chat box. But if you do have any questions or comments for our team, you can send those through via the Q&A box, and that will remain anonymous. I'll also be available behind the scenes throughout for any general questions or tech issues. So if you're having any challenges throughout the webinar, please feel free to send me a message through that, or you can contact me at shannon@russellalexander.com, and I'll do my best to help resolve any issues that you may have. And I'll make sure to put my email in the chat box as well for your reference. We also just ask that you keep in mind that the content of this webinar is intended to provide you with general information on separation and divorce and is not to be considered as legal advice. And just another quick note here, I will be providing links to helpful resources and a list of our upcoming webinars in a follow-up email tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. And without further ado, it's now my pleasure to introduce today's hosts from the Greater Toronto Area. We have Russell Alexander, Nafisa Nazarelli, and Jason Eisenberg of Russell Alexander Collaborative Family Lawyers. Nafisa is the Senior Managing Associate Lawyer at our firm. She is a collaboratively trained lawyer and has been practicing exclusively in all areas of family law for over 10 years with the best interest of children as a primary focus when providing legal advice and strategies for clients. She uses her skills as a collaborative lawyer to find creative ways of achieving positive results for her clients. And Nafisa is also committed to giving back to the community and currently sits as a board of director at Luke's Place, the Malvern Family Resource Center, the Durham Region Law Association, and Collaborative Practice Durham Region. Jason is an associate family lawyer and has over 20 years of legal experience. He excels at helping his clients reach resolutions in their family law issues and finds it very rewarding being a family lawyer, as he has the opportunity to support people in moving forward and starting the next chapter of their lives. Through his many years of experience, Jason has been praised for his hard work in providing a personal touch with his clients and has become known for his patience and attention. Russell is the founder and senior partner of Russell Alexander Collaborative Family Lawyers, and with over 20 years of experience, Russell offers a wealth of knowledge and expertise in collaborative family law. He uses his experience with a client-focused approach by creating unique solutions for each of his clients to enable them and their families to move forward with their lives in a compassionate and collaborative manner. So now, without further ado, I'm going to pass things over to Russell, now that you know a little bit more about what's on the agenda today and a little bit more about our team. So there you are, Russ. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Those are very kind words. We really have a dream team here today in terms of legal knowledge with Jason and Nafisa. Thank you so much for joining us. But before I let you go, Shannon, we have Q&A we're going to save at the end, but you can send your questions in to Shannon in the chat. We're going to answer as many as we can throughout the program. Please give us your feedback and let us know if you've enjoyed this topic, what other topics you'd like us to talk about. Some of the feedback we've gotten from previous live events was common law and case lines, and we developed topics for those subjects. And are we in a position to offer our guarantee for 2022? Shannon, what do you think?
We're going to continue on with the new year with our money back guarantee, same as 2021. For anyone who is unsatisfied, we will offer a money back guarantee for our free webinar, as always.
How can you go wrong? So let's launch the poll question. Let's get into this. What the other feedback we got is people love the poll questions. It's a chance to interact. It's a chance for us to find out who our audience is. So please participate. Shannon indicated everything's anonymous, so nobody's going to know what answers you're posting. But it helps us gauge the material in terms of whether we should take a deeper dive or do a more bird's eye view of the material that we're presenting today. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Why are you here? You have a couple answers. You're a legal professional and would like to learn more. You're a professional outside of law and would like to learn more. You're currently going through a separation or divorce. You're seeking guidance for a friend, family, or loved one, or other. And again, for the other responses, just put it in the box and Shannon will get it to the host today. So what are our results? Shannon, let's take a look at who our audience is today. Okay, so 35% legal professional, 20% other professional, 35% going through a separation and divorce, and other. So fairly good mix today in terms of our audience. So thank you everyone for sending in your answers. So what are we talking about? Why is Divorce Day? What's Divorce Day and why is it in January each year? People who practice family law, we often see an ebb and flow to our workloads. And there's, certain times of the year that we're always busy. March break's busy. Summer holidays can be busy. Back to school is especially busy for us because sometimes busy, especially the last 2 years, but traditionally, kids would go with the other parent, and then the other parent would say, I don't want them to go, they don't want to go back, or there's a dispute over the school district. So that's a busy time of year. Christmas is always incredibly busy. Parents not fully understanding new agreements or court orders or not agreeing on how to share time. And unfortunately, Divorce Day in Canada, January, first week back, is busy. We see this historically over the course of 20 years. These are the ebbs and flow in family law. Number of reasons, I think, that we get this bump in January. Oftentimes, people may decide to separate in September, October, November, but because it's so close to the Christmas break or the festive holiday, they say, okay, let's just get through one more Christmas with the kids and then put off the separation or divorce until January. Oftentimes, the credit card statements come in January. Your Christmas shopping, you may have overspent, increased debt load, inability to pay the debt causes relationships to fracture. Confrontations over the Christmas holidays, spending time with extended family, or disputes with former partners that are having access issues with you, and your new partner causes the relationship to break down. New Year's resolutions, and people wanting to make a fresh start. This time of year, everybody rethinks what they want to do for the following year and what changes they want to make to their lives. Sometimes, unfortunately, that involves leaving their spouse, or their spouse is leaving them, or one or more spouses have met online or met somebody else, and January just seems to have a spike in that. So that's sort of what Divorce Day in Canada is to family lawyers, and we see this pattern every year. You'll see in the media and the news outlets, there's always talk about how this is a very busy time of year for divorce lawyers, and the pandemic just seems to have amplified that. So what would ordinarily be a bump in a relationship is usually amplified because of the stress and uncertainty of the pandemic, and we're seeing this causing relationships to fail. It just seems to be a normal part of the pandemic now. We're approaching year 3, and I don't see any change in that going forward. But let's see what our hosts think. Nafisa, what do you think of that summary of Divorce Day?
I think it's quite accurate, Russ. So having practiced for over 10 years, January is always my busiest month. And I find that it's sort of, people take the holidays to think over their goals and really drill down on what they want the following year to look like. And a lot of people decide at that point that they no longer want to be in an unhappy marriage or relationship. And come that first week of January, they're calling a lawyer and really moving forward with the resolution of breaking the relationship so that they can sort of pursue happiness, really. So I do think that it definitely has been over the last 10 years, the busiest month for myself.
Yeah, and that's really insightful. A lot of law firms, especially last couple of years, usually shut down for 1, 2, 3 weeks, partly because of the way the holiday falls. And the other reason is so we can recharge our batteries, give our support staff a bit of a break. So there may be people who said in December, I'm divorcing, but just because of the availability of lawyers and consultations, it flips over to January. So we get a bit of a overspill from December as well. Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is time for resolutions, right? We all sit down and say, I'm going to eat better, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And this is the ultimate resolution, right? It's to say, I'm moving on from a relationship. So I think that's what happens. And yes, I think that I echo what Nafisa said. What we're looking at is time where people have gotten through the holidays. They want to just make sure that that's pleasant for children, pleasant for family, or maybe the holidays was the trigger. Having to spend all that time with your spouse's family that you don't like or doesn't like you, and you're like, this is the last time I'm ever going to do that. So I just think it's a time for reflection, and I think that people come back and say I was off, and I had time to think about it and gather my thoughts, and now I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Thank you for that, Jason. I think we have another poll queued up here. So poll number 2, common law couples divorce. I guess, do common law couples divorce, true or false? So you get one shot at this. You don't get to hide your answer under the other section. I guess we could add another section in there, but so this is always an interesting question, and I think it helps put the hosts into perspective. So oftentimes when we talk about family law, we just assume everybody on the other side of the desk or the Zoom call or the phone call understands exactly what we're talking about. And it's important to realize that a lot of people have no idea what is involved in family law. Sometimes we'll talk about equalization, and another way of saying it is just how do you share your family property? We just assume everybody knows what it means. So this will be kind of an interesting result to see. I'm just assuming everybody knows the answer, but let's see what our results are. And so common law couples divorce, true 20%, false 81%. Well, this ties in neatly between for our next subject. And what's the answer to this question, Jason?
Common law couples do not divorce. You have to be married to divorce. And so that's one thing I commonly see when I do consultations is people will say to me, I'm here for a divorce. I want a divorce. Let's be clear. It's just a terminology, right? They interchange the two words, separation and divorce. They're not interchangeable. Divorce is what married people do. It's the legal right to remarry is what you're doing. You're ending your marriage. But common law spouses, they're not married. So what do? Well, that's what a separation is. That's what all couples doing, married or common law. You're ending the relationship. You're tying up all the loose ends from the time you live together. And that's what we call separation. So to visualize, if separation is the umbrella, then divorce is something underneath the umbrella. Just like what you'll do with the kids, what you do with money, what you do with a house. Divorce is one of those little subtopics underneath the umbrella of separation. So they're not interchangeable. What else I get asked a lot when people were doing consults and talking about separation divorce is, I want a legal separation. Now, that's the term they use. And I think what they're implying when I speak to them and talk further about it.
Do your lawyer thing, Jason. Make this legal. All right, do some lawyer stuff for me.
That's what I mean. Like, I got a magic wand and there's some form I fill out. I think what they're talking about is like, I have a marriage certificate. It tells me when I was married. I want some document that shows when I was legally separated, right? Like, give me that. And you type it up for me and say, Bob Jones, Mary Smith is now legally separated. And that's what I do. Not really. I mean, the closest thing we have to that is maybe a separation agreement. We'll talk a bit about that today. And that's a contract. And we also have divorce orders, which say, you're no longer married. And married people get that. So, sometimes people don't agree when they're separated. So saying I have a legal separation is somewhat loaded as a problem. You might not agree that you're separated at all. I once did a trial on those facts where one party said, we're not separated, Your Honor, and even though we're sitting here in the middle of a trial and navigated away through a court matter. In any event, what you're getting in a separation agreement is an agreement on that date. We separated on this date. And that's when you've signed that form. And is that your legal separation? It's a document that shows everything about what happened and how you resolved everything and includes the date you separated. If you can't agree, then you'll go get a judge telling you what to do. And if you're married, it'll be in a divorce order. When a judge decides your date of separation, and that's a little different. That's the two of you arguing about what date you thought you separated. And that's going to be in the form of an order. But there's a lot that goes into determining that date of separation. I don't think I can take a deep dive on that today. But, what we're looking at, a legal separation, is firming up all those little issues, little loose ends you've got from your relationship, putting that in an agreement, which is a contract, or getting it in an order, which a judge gives you, which you can agree upon as well, or a judge decides.
Yeah. And we have, we could spend 2 hours on this subject. We have a live event on common law couples. We have another live event we're producing on advanced issues and the difference between separation and divorce. So this is sort of a broad overview, but that's a great summary. Thank you for that, Jason. And we do have some great questions coming in. We've got one about whether this is going to be provided in a recording. We're going to talk about that. Some questions about abuse and narcissistic individuals. That seems to come up every live event. So we're going to talk a little bit more, circle back to those questions, but keep them coming in. Thank you so much. Time for a poll, because we love our polls. So poll number 3, the grounds for divorce are. Now there's some hot debate here yesterday when we were doing our dry run in terms of what are we going to include. So living separate and apart for 1 year. And again, separation is an important topic. I would say when the toothbrush shows up, you're separated. So if you're common law, right? And when you separate, that's a whole nother subject matter. So you got to determine when the relationship starts to determine if you've been separated for a year. But this is common law. We're talking about divorce here. Irreconcilable differences, cruelty, adultery, refusal to do the dishes or vacuum. A, C, and D are your choices. And there are some other topics that we're going to put in here, but I think this fairly captures what the possible grounds of divorce are. So we'll give everybody a chance to let that marinate. What do you think, Jason? Anything else we should have thrown in this poll?
No, I think the one we get commonly is adultery. People think that ends a marriage, obviously, and I think that the other items people tend to overlook because adultery is so emotional. It's so unforgivable for some people. So yeah, we tend to hear that one. I think that's the one people will laser focus in on.
Clients really want their lawyers to focus in on adultery and bad behavior, right? And a lot of questions I get unrelated to the divorce issue is, do I get an unequal share of property, or is that going to affect equalization, right? They cheated on me, so I get more. They don't get the house, right? They left the house, so they've abandoned their right to the house. So adultery can really rightly fire up people, but let's see what our results are. Living separate and apart for 1 year, 21%. cruelty, 0, irreconcilable differences, 0, adultery, 3%. You got a couple votes there, Jason. A, C, and D, clear majority, 76%. I think that's probably the correct answer. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, that is. I was hoping someone would put the refusal, do the dishes or vacuum, because you know, that's also unforgivable in some households. But no, it's those 3 items. There's 3 grounds. That's what we have in Canada. And you know, I should only add that you have to be a victim of adultery. You can't be the adulterer and go, I want to separate because I was an adulterer and or adulteress. You have to be the victim, and a victim of cruelty as well. So we're looking at the victim asking for the divorce, not the perpetrator.
Probably the most common ground we see in the court documents are separate and apart for a year. You know, to lead evidence on these other issues, right? Cruelty, adultery. By the time you have a trial and you lead your evidence, you would have been separated for a year. And now it doesn't improve your case, right?
No, I don't think I've ever claimed those 2 things.
I have never pled that either, Jason. I don't, and I've never received an application from another lawyer that has pled cruelty or adultery. So most people will always claim under living separate and apart for a year, because you don't have to prove the adultery or cruelty. It just doesn't make sense to put those as the grounds for divorce.
Logistically, if you think about it, it might be a month or 2 before you get in to see your lawyer. They may exchange some information with your spouse. That may go well or may not. It could be 7-8 months before a separation agreement is prepared, or before you get a chance to see a case management judge. So really 1 year, that'd be fairly quick if you can get. Lots of times people have to wait, right, for their year to run out before they can get their divorce certificate. But interesting poll. Thank you for those answers. So the counseling services, Nafisa?
Yeah, so as a legal professional, we do have a very important obligation to ensure that our clients, you know, they seek the resources that are available to them to help them deal with a divorce or separation. So the breakdown of a relationship is one of the most difficult things that any client will go through. It's extremely taxing. You know, your entire life is, you know, is falling, it's really falling apart. You don't know what you're going to do with finances. You don't know where you're going to live. You don't know what's going to happen to the children. So there is absolutely no shame in seeking help for all of the emotions that you're going to experience during a separation. As lawyers, we do have a job, and it's related to really sorting out the legal issues. And unfortunately, we are not trained social workers, and it can become quite costly if you use your lawyer for counseling services. So, you know, we bill by the hour, and there are lots of professionals that are out there, social workers, psychologists, that are a lot cheaper than lawyers, that can help you deal with the emotional aspects. And so I always recommend to my clients, you know, I'm here to help you sort through the legal issues, and it will be beneficial if you hire someone to assist with the emotional aspects of your separation, because that will allow me to do my job a little bit easier, and it'll be cheaper for you and more efficient. So that's the advice that I always give. And also, you know, if you have children, they are also going to be going through quite a bit of change due to the separation, the impact of that, feelings that they're going to have to sort through. So I also recommend that it's really important for both yourselves as well as your children to gain the assistance of someone that can help sort through those emotions, so that you come out on the other end healthier and able to sort of move forward, and not with baggage sort of remaining from the separation. So counseling is very important.
Yeah, when we do collaborative practice files, like collaborative divorce, I always try to start with a full team. And part of that team is a family professional. And they're going to provide the separating spouses with counseling, communication guidelines, Oftentimes they'll prepare a parenting plan with them offline, which means outside of the full team setting. So you're not paying your lawyer, several $100s an hour to deal with this. You're paying a family neutral who's going to help you get focused on what's important to the kids. That expense is shared usually between the parties. So this is commonplace in collaborative practice, but when you're going through divorce, counseling is as important as well. Now, I want to circle back to some of these questions. All right, I'm just going to read them out. Does the court recognize when they're dealing with a narcissistic individual? How do I help the court see my spouse's true nature? Does emotional abuse, gaslighting, and manipulative spouse mean anything to the courts? Younger kids are involved. Well, we hear lots of times when you're in litigation, unfortunately, there's allegations that the other side's narcissistic, and clients will spend literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to prove it, thinking there's some kind of result at the end that's going to remedy past wrongs during the course of the relationship. But what do you say about that question, Nafisa?
So I think that, I get this a lot as well, where, you're dealing with the narcissistic personality on the other side, delaying matters, causing costs to go up. And unfortunately, like you said, Russ, like we're really dealing with, okay, what does this narcissistic personality, what is this person doing that's not in the best interest of the children? For example, when we're looking at issues surrounding the children or property division. So the courts will care, in terms of costs, if your costs have been have gone up because of this behavior, lots of delays, that type of thing. But in the real scheme of thing, I always tell my clients, this is someone that you're going to probably have to parent with. They're going to get parenting time irrespective of their behaviors. And they're also going to be, you've got to learn to work with this person, and that will help you in the long run as putting tools in your toolbox to assist in how to work with this person. Litigation can get very costly. And at the end of it, you may be successful in getting some costs against someone who has used the litigation process as a sort of an arm against you in terms of, continuing the abuse through the litigation, but it will be a very long journey to get to that end result. So I always try to counsel my clients as the behaviors are happening. Each instance, we look at that and we see, okay, how do we deal with this instance? Because a lot of times the courts are months and months away in terms of a motion or the timeline. So it's really day to day, how do you deal with this personality?
And narcissistic it's a clinical label, right? We all see litigants who, the more general question is, how do you stop a litigant who will stop at nothing, right? And we even see, unfortunately, professionals like that, like lawyers. So some people characterize lawyers as warriors or arsonists, right? They're going to burn everything to the ground. Or other characteristics could be firefighters or peacemakers, right? Depending on who you're dealing with, whether it's your spouse or the other counsel, there's tools like Nafisa is indicating that you can employ to sort of put some guardrails up to limit the damage these litigants are going to do. And a big part of that is going to be case management. So if somebody's delaying, not producing disclosure, is acting not in the best interest of the children, then the judge will step in and make some orders to deal with that. So great question. Another quick one here, Nafisa, since I got you on the hot seat. What about domestic and financial abuse? So
with domestic and financial abuse, again, there are always remedies with a court a judge is there to assist with giving orders, cost awards, for example, providing orders that particular disclosure has to be provided by a particular date. After that date, there may be some cost consequences. So they provide sort of that oversight on a file, and litigation is where that can become helpful. I always try to negotiate files, outside of the litigation process, but sometimes that's not possible, and you do need the judge to assist with really difficult litigants.
And in terms of financial abuse, right, the court will remedy that. So if, just say, give you a few examples. If somebody's not paying spousal support, the court can make a retroactive award for spousal support and make that person whole again. Or if somebody has gone ahead and recklessly depleted assets with a new girlfriend or boyfriend and spent it gambling or some other wasted money, the court can adjust for that, or sometimes even make an unequal division of family property. So there are remedies, but certainly it's a very important topic. Final question that came in is, are we going to do a webinar on financial statements? The answer is yes. Thank you for that. That's in the works. But poll question number 4, let's get back to the polls. Thank you for that, Nafisa. That was very insightful. When spouses separate, they each get 1/2 of the house. Wow. 1/2. Spouses separating. True, false, or it depends? I don't know, Jason, this almost sounds like a trick question. Is this one of yours?
It was one of mine, yeah. I get asked this a lot.
All right, well, let's see our poll results, and then you can tell us the answer. So,
okay.
True, you get 1/2, 21%. False, you get no, so it's 6%. It depends. Well, it sounds like we got a lot of lawyers in the crowd here. It depends on the facts of your particular case, 73%. All right, so what's the answer, Jason? Help us out here.
Well, I think it depends, because I think that I've had people that just presume that that's the starting point, and that's where it ends. That we sell the house, we split it, and that's it. But there are other things that go on in your separation. Remember, we're tying up loose ends, and so some of the loose ends involve other payments that have to be made. That's the property division piece. It could be the retroactive support you were talking about, Russ. So I think you start there, yes. It depends, meaning that there could be other payments you have to make. And what's the easiest way for a judge to make you make those payments? Take the money from the house. It's there, it's cash. Instead of saying, you know what, transfer your RSPs, which are not cash, and come with a tax consequence if you cash them out. Or I'll give you my car. I don't want your car. I want cash. So that's where we sometimes see that house not being divided equally.
That's how you define spouse too, right?
Yes.
If you're married, that's one thing. If you're common law, you might have to make a constructive or resulting or joint family trust claim to the home. And again, that's a whole nother subject. So got to be careful in terms of the language that we use. All right,
Correct.
so this can be scary. What happens? We're probably creating more questions than we're answering. So I'm sorry about that. But at least you're getting a flavor of divorce day in Canada. This can be scary. What happens next? Okay. This is an overwhelming experience going through a separation and divorce, especially for long-term marriages. You think, I've been with this person for 20 years. And what's my future going to look like? What are my finances going to look like? The housing market's gone crazy. How are we going to be able to afford 2 homes? Am I going to qualify for a mortgage? Like, these are big questions. Where are my kids going to live? What's the relationship going to be like with extended family? So what happens next? Well, first, what you need to do is make a plan. And ideally, that's going to be with a lawyer or a financial planner or a counselor, as Nafisa has indicated. What I find is a really good tip for everyone involved in this process is write out your questions. Just grab a piece of paper, just write out your questions and issues and things that you want to understand a little bit more deeper in point form. And then when you meet with your professional, whatever capacity they are, if they're counsel, you're probably going to get overwhelmed and forget about a lot of the things we tell you, because we're sometimes using a different language, different terms, using concepts that really don't make sense to anybody, but that's what's in the legislation, right? And that's what the government has decided the rules are when you separate and divorce. So by writing out your questions, you can pull out your pad of paper, go through them one by one with your counsel or your counselor, and that way you're not going to overlook anything. My advice generally is to keep the status quo in place with respect to children and finances until an agreement can be reached. that may only be for a week or two until the lawyers can come to some basic ground rules. The last thing we want people doing is self-help or moving the kids from the home or leaving the province. We want to try to maintain a status quo, and that includes basic things like making your credit card payments, paying your mortgage, keeping your insurance valid, keeping up to date on the household bills. All these are going to affect your credit ratings if you let them fall behind, and it's going to make it difficult to finance a new home. Also, we want to be mindful of domestic violence issues. This is really coming to the forefront. It's always been there, but the Divorce Act changes specifically address the risk that many spouses face when they're in a situation of domestic violence. Unfortunately, most Canadians are killed by spouses as opposed to strangers. It's a really elevated time when you're going through a separation and divorce. Safety first is always my advice. If you're at all concerned about violence, intimidation, or any kind of conduct like that, either towards you, it could be emotional, physical, it could be towards the children, bring that up with your counselor, your professional, your lawyer, whoever you're dealing with. They can get restraining orders in place and make sure that you're safe. So those are some very initial steps. But oftentimes this evolves into what we call kitchen table agreements. And then there's issues of disclosure, which means you need to have the proper information to make an informed decision. Then there's an issue of advice as well. So what have we got on this one, Jason?
Well, kitchen table agreements, I think the definition of that is that you do it yourself. You and your spouse are going to sit there, or your husband or wife are going to sit there and
At your kitchen
draft
table,
something
right?
up. At your kitchen table, yeah.
But
Do it on
the
a
dishes
napkin, do it
weren't
on some
done,
paper
so you're
towel.
gonna have to move the dishes to the sink, right? That's the grounds for divorce.
That's right. You got to have room, and that just summarizes, encapsulates the whole situation right there, the table or whatever, full of dishes. But that's the idea, is that do it yourself. Take one off the internet, take one your friend used, your sister, brother, whoever used, and modify it for whatever you need, or just sign it up. And, you don't need a lawyer to do a separation agreement. I mean, Russ probably doesn't want me to say that, and neither does my wife, but that's the situation. You can do it yourself. What are the pitfalls? Well, it's a contract. That's what you're signing. That's what you're doing. We have specific items that need to be in a contract. Russ was getting into a bit of them there.
I'm raising my hand, Jason.
Okay.
I'm just going to say, sometimes these kitchen table agreements create more work for lawyers, right? But go ahead. I'm going to circle back to that, but that's my teaser for my retort. But go ahead.
Well, that's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Why do you do this? Why are you entering into this agreement? Think about it. I think the answer is, so you have something in writing that sets out the rules of what you're going to do. It talks about payments you have to make, payments that you will receive, your responsibilities, your rights, your obligations, all these things that you're either going to have agreed happened in the past and are resolved now, or going forward. So it's meant to give you peace of mind, like Russ was talking about, what happens next, all these unknowns. It's meant to make the unknowns known so you can be comfortable going forward. What happens if that's not right? You're always looking over your shoulder and going like, am I going to have to pay more money? Am I going to get less time with the children? You want to make sure that document is valid. If it topples over and it isn't, then it's not worth the paper it's written on. So you need a couple of things to make it valid. Russ was talking about it. You need to say, okay, let's make sure we disclosed everything. I know everything about you. You know everything about me. That's what a lawyer will partly do, unless the client says, hey, I don't want to do this, and we work with that. But that's one of the hallmarks of an agreement. Another hallmark of the agreement is that you get independent legal advice, which means you both have your own lawyers. You don't go the same one. You don't use just two different ones in the same office. Independent means that it's on your own. Each one of you has your own person. And that lawyer will tell you what's good, what's bad, explain it to you, answer your questions, make sure you're doing it voluntarily, make sure you're not been forced into doing something because someone's saying, well, if you don't sign this, you're not going to get this anymore. So those are some of the items that make an agreement valid, and you're not going to have with a kitchen table agreement. You might have the disclosure, but you're not going to have the independent legal advice part.
Remember in the old days,
just,
Jason, when one lawyer would sign off on both spouses?
well,
That's a
that
big
doesn't
no-no
work.
now, but it used to be commonplace, right?
Well, it's a no-no because if you walk into your lawyer's office and say, I don't know if this is
Oh no, I think Jason froze.
Yeah.
is
So,
good for me or not, but the lawyer helps both the person. We call that a conflict.
right.
Sorry?
No, you just cut out for a
You can't
moment
do that.
there. Finish your thoughts.
Oh, I cut out for a moment?
Yeah.
You're good now.
Okay. Okay, sorry. If you walk into a lawyer's office and say, I like this document, what isn't good for me? And you have a lawyer representing both people, how do they tell that one person, well, this isn't good for you, because they also have an obligation to tell the other person, this is very good for you? It's a conflict. That's the classic
Right.
case of why we can't help people on both sides of the agreement. We have to be able to tell them something's good for you, and the other person's going to have to find out from someone else it's bad for them. That's why it's independent legal advice.
There's a lot to unpack there. And a lot of questions coming in on disclosure. I just want to see if I can summarize it. You know, disclosure is useless, driven by experts. Why you need every piece of paper. I'm denied financial information, banking, mortgages, can't get information. They're hiding account information. Disclosure is important because you need to make an informed decision as to what your compromise is. Maybe you're going to share everything down the middle. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're going to accept an unequal division, or you're not going to pursue spousal support even though you're entitled to it, but you're making an informed decision. That's why disclosure is so important. But courts will tell you the disclosure needs to be relevant. You can't just go on these fishing expeditions. We often see these requests by arsonists or these lawyers who just want to crank up the expense and ask for bank accounts from, 2009, which have nothing to do with the case and probably aren't available. And if they are available, they're going to be expensive to get. So the judge is going to manage disclosure requests. It needs to be relevant to what the court needs to decide. If it's relevant, then the rule will be full disclosure. So you're going to have to produce it, whether you like it or not. That could even involve your new partner's income if there's an issue of support. So just to answer some of these questions is important so you can make an informed decision. And if we go further, you have one of these kitchen table agreements that Jason's talking about. If there's not adequate disclosure, the Family Law Act sets that as a basis to set aside the agreement, and because proper disclosure wasn't produced. The courts generally want to hold clients to their word in their agreements and won't tamper with them. But if disclosure was misleading or not produced or not, it was requested and was inaccurate, then that could be a basis to set aside. What do you think of these disclosure issues, Jason, that our audience is asking us about?
Well, I think one question is, just usually ends up being useless. And why is this the rule? I think you hit on a bit of it, but what I'll add is that some people don't always know what the other spouse has. They either are not privy to it at all during the relationship. I had no idea what he had or she had. No, I never saw any mail. I never saw any banking records. So if you enter into a contract on what you know, that could be nothing. And that could mean that you lost something. That could mean that you ripped the other person off. And as Russ says, that could lead to a judge saying, I'm ripping this agreement up. So why go through the process of drafting this up, the negotiation, the discussion, the trading off of items, just to find out that that document is just useless, as opposed to saying the disclosure part was useless. It's better safe than sorry. We're lawyers. We think of worst case scenarios. And that's one of the worst case scenarios, is that you enter into this extensive contract, spend money on it, just to find out it's not worth the paper it's written on.
2 years later, you got to start over again. Great point. There is a lot of great questions coming in here. What are the pros and cons of having a mediator assist with the agreement? I know a lawyer who also serves as a mediator. Well, we're all for resolution and working matters outside the court system. I would still get independent legal advice if you have one lawyer acting as a mediator. Some mediation agreements are fantastic for, dividing contents, dealing with parenting schedules. Substantive property and support claims should always be reviewed by get an independent lawyer for both of them. So let's go on to our next. Thank you, Jason. And we're trying to get to everybody's questions here. Poll 6, adulterous spouse receives. All right, so you guys answered this poll question for us. And I'm going to do a couple quick questions. So another question about common law, one party is paying the mortgage for 5 years, but isn't registered. Well, you're gonna have to go to our live event on common law. Short answer to that question would be, if you're making financial contributions to a home that you don't own, you may have a resulting trust interest in that home, and possibly a constructive trust interest as well. It's gonna be fact dependent. And then, okay. Here's one for you, Nafisa. Do the kids' feelings and emotion play into custody at all? Well, 5 and 7. What's your take on that one, Nafisa?
So I think that when we're looking at parenting responsibilities and parenting time, we look at what is in the best interest of the children. Part of that test is, the child's emotional health and well-being. The child's views can form part of the test. So depending on their maturity levels, you can get, someone, a social worker, to sort of report to the court on what the children's wishes are. A child that's 5 is a bit young for that. I would say it's probably around, 7 to 12 and above is kind of the range where I say that their wishes are looked upon by the courts as to determining their best interest.
Yeah, age will go a long way. We have very immature 15-year-olds and very mature 10-year-olds, right? It's going to be dependent on the child as well. Great answer, Nafisa. Let's see our poll results. All right, adulterous spouses get less money, 0 less time, 0 less support, 6%. Dirty looks from the judge, only 6%, Jason. B and C, 6%. None of the above. This is a really sophisticated audience. Was this your question, Jason, again?
Yeah, it was my question, because I said a lot of people want to.
What's the answer here?
Well,
of course, they're going to get a dirty look from somebody. Maybe not the judge.
Probably.
Maybe the mother-in-law, right?
Someone. I mean,
Right.
but hopefully not the kids, because they probably shouldn't be told about it. But that happens inevitably as well. But yeah, the answer is nothing really. Other than the divorce part, we said adultery doesn't factor into any of these issues. I guess the one extreme example where it could is if you have a new partner and you say, we separated yesterday, but I'm moving with my partner, and I think it's a good idea for my kids and I to live with that new partner. It's probably not going to go over very well, because the kids don't know this person at all. And that's the only time where adultery is going to kind of hurt you. But that's not really adultery. That's more just not being self-aware, or thinking, or maybe being, a little too selfish and not thinking about the kids.
All right, we're entering to the rapid fire phase of our presentation, because we want to get to our poll or some more questions at the end. So I hate to do this to you guys. 30 seconds or less. Let's go. Nafisa, you got the first one?
Tips for working with your divorce lawyer. So I would say definitely communicate. Don't be afraid to let your lawyer know, what your instructions are, and, be very clear and concise in what you would like. Be organized. Don't be afraid to voice your concerns. Let your lawyer know if you do not understand. So sometimes clients, they feel like they don't feel like they're scared to tell their lawyers they don't understand. But, I can try to explain things many different ways, but I need to know that you don't understand for me to be able to try to tackle, I want to make sure that you understand. So don't be afraid to let your lawyer know that you don't understand. And then also one other tip is, try to write down all of your questions and all of your concerns, and deal with them in one sort of concise meeting rather than trickling through information slowly. I think, you want to be efficient and make sure that you're making good use of your time, and you're also be mindful of the finances. So again, those are all tips to try to sort of work with your lawyer. And I think the number one overall tip is make sure to communicate.
I think that was more than 30 seconds. I'm putting a timer on. Jason, you've never answered a question in 30 seconds. I'm giving you the challenge. Tips to
I'm
represent
ready for it.
yourself in court in 30 seconds or less. Timer's going. Go, Jason.
Okay. First, a shameless plug. We have lots of podcasts. We have live events like this one, YouTube videos, blogs that can help you with information if you represent yourself in court. Next, you can hire a lawyer to give you limited advice only. So they can either go to court one day, they can draft paperwork for you, they can answer all your questions on the side. You're still the face of what's going on, but they're in the background to help, or only the face when you need them. Last, think about it. This is stressful. You are going through a lot of emotional things. You're going to not be yourself. You're not going to be acting like your normal self. This is a pretty stressful situation. So a lawyer helps you with that. So, think about it. Take a step back and say, what would I do if I were not emotionally involved in this? It's not easy to do, but that's kind of what we do as lawyers. So if you represent yourself, perspective, that's my point.
50 seconds. It's pretty good. I'm going to give you a break because you did plug. Speaking of plugs, Shannon put the link for the common law live event. So if you want to learn more, go to the link. All right, resetting my clock. Divorce Act changes, 30 seconds or less. Nafisa, go.
All right, so changes to the Divorce Act came into force March 1st of 2021. Some of the key changes was changes to the language. The new wording is sort of more neutral, more child focused. The act also expands the definition of violence. So there's more that we can use when we're arguing these important issues.
Wow, 28 seconds. I think you get a prize. That is amazing.
I had a lot more to say, but
we've never been late, but that was awesome. All right, Divorce Act, common law couples, 30 seconds or less. Jason, go. I've got you on the time. Repeat, Nafisa.
So you're basically dealing with three different areas of law. When you're common law, you're dealing with all the kids and all the support are all the same. But property, there's some little different bits. First, you're dealing with property law. Who owns it? That's where we start. Family law might change that. So it's a second area of law and say that even if you're married, then who owns it doesn't matter as much. But of course, you're common law, so you're not married. So then we deal with the third area. And Russ talked a bit about that trust law, which says if dividing stuff by ownership is not fair, then maybe we do something different with it. So those are the areas of law you're dealing with.
34 seconds, very respectable.
Summarized, I shouldn't have summarized.
30 seconds or less, Nafisa, family dispute resolution.
This is too big a topic to go in 30 seconds, but I'll just say that there's various different methods to deal with resolution of family disputes. ADR is sort of alternative dispute resolutions, mediation, collaborative practice. These are all tools that are great to try to get to a resolution without going to court. Highly recommend that everyone tries to get through their issues without litigation. It's the best way. And if you need to learn more, we have lots on our blog.
Fantastic. 36 seconds. All right, let's get into our next poll. Limitation period for division of property is, and again, this could be another 1 hour topic, 5 years, 2 years, 6 years, or B and C. All right, so we're gonna give everybody a chance to enter, ask that. Jason, start talking about Zoom divorce for a couple minutes, and then we're gonna bring this train into the station.
Well, Zoom divorce is a product of the pandemic, right? We're dealing with people who can't gather in person, so you can't go to court, you can't mediate, you can't even do collaborative practice in the same room. So if we can't meet safely together, then what do? Well, a lot of people are using Zoom. That's what the court's using as well. So use it for mediation, use it for collaborative, use it for negotiation between lawyers and people only, and the court. So some people love it. Some people say this is great. I don't have to see my spouse that much. I can go to breakout rooms. And we had a bit of that when we mediated because you can go into little separate rooms. So that's not that different. But there are aspects where you don't have to physically be in the same spot as them. So that works for people. It makes them happy. It makes them less nervous as well. You don't have to. You have to do it all in the comfort of your home. You can have your own coffee mug. You can basically wear comfortable pants or no pants at all. So people like that aspect of it. If it's court, it's all the same benefits. No driving to an unfamiliar courthouse, finding and paying for parking, finding the courtroom, just much less stressful for a lot of people. And, that's what we're dealing with in a pandemic instead of dealing with everything in person.
We have live events, podcasts, and YouTube videos on Zoom Divorce and Modern Lawyer, how to divorce during the pandemic. Shannon's going to give you all that information. Jason, poll number 7 was the correct answer.
Well, the answer is B and C.
Our audience is smart, right? Whenever they see a B, C, or D, they know that's probably the right answer.
All fails, choose B. I thought that was the, or C or whatever it was,
all right,
for multiple guess.
Final poll of the day, then we're going to do a quick 15, 20-second closing comments, and then we're going to do Q&A. So the most common reason you believe failures spike in December and they go see lawyers in January. Let's see what our audience thinks. Closing remarks, Nafisa, 15, 20 seconds.
So I think in closing, I'd just like to say, take the time to really find a lawyer if you are going the lawyer route that you can work with. Try to be organized and really use the resources of other professionals for the emotions of divorce, so that you can really key in on the legal issues with your lawyer and really have them help you through all of the legal issues during divorce.
Excellent. Jason, 15, 20 seconds, closing comments.
First thing you should do is figure out what happens tomorrow. If you can't and don't know what's going on tomorrow, you can't figure out what you're going to be doing a month from now, a year from now. A lawyer is not going to find you a new apartment or pay the bills. They're going to help you with that, but it's going to take time. So focus there. Focus on the small view, and then that gives you the ability to focus more on the big view.
Great stuff. My final comment is, please give us your feedback. We really want to know what you thought of today's event. The poll results, finances and spending more time together tie for top spots on the poll questions. So thank you everybody once again for answering. Our host Shannon's going to come back and bring this train into the station and do some Q&A. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nafisa, Jason, and Russell, for your insights. We hope that everyone found that helpful. And thank you so much to our audience who sent in questions. We hope that a lot of them were answered throughout, but we're going to try and squeeze in at least another one before we log off here. So first question I have here is, I've been divorced now for 10 years. If my ex is financially well off, for example, no debts, fully paid house, do they have grounds to reduce payments on the support calculator from the current near maximum to the minimum? And is it worth the pursuit?
Lisa, you've been getting all the hard questions today. You want to take this one?
Sure. So the recipient of support has an obligation to become self-sufficient. So there's lots of factors that we look at when we look at whether we can sort of terminate or reduce support. So is it compensatory in nature? So is it a long-term relationship? Is it was it a traditional relationship where, one person was where the recipient needs to be compensated for things that she did or he did during the relationship? So it's important to look at those facts. If it's a traditional marriage, it'll be harder to terminate. If it's, a need and ability to pay sort of basis for support, and he has become self-sufficient, then you will have grounds to reduce or terminate. So that's something you should be looking into, and I do think it's worth it. But I kind of need more facts to kind of determine where to go with it. But 10 years seems like a long time, but it depends on, is it 10 years out of 30 years? Is it 10 years out of 40 years, right? It really depends on how long that relationship was and his or her age. The recipient's age at the date of separation is also important.
Facts, the roles playing during the course of the marriage, a whole myriad of issues that you need to review and get good advice on. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you. I think that's all the time we have for Q&A. So just going to wrap up here. We just want to thank our panelists once again, and thank you to everyone in the audience for your questions and for your participation today. We hope you found today's presentation insightful. If you do have any questions or general comments about our virtual event series, please feel free to reach out to me at shannon@russellalexander.com. And we also have a survey that pops up in your browser following the webinar. So please, if you have the time, we welcome and appreciate any feedback you have from today's session so we can take it into consideration as we continue to grow our virtual event series in 2022. And one of those questions will be to share your thoughts on topics that you'd like to see our team present on in the future. So please, as Russ mentioned, we love to hear your ideas, so please share those with us. And just want to mention again to keep an eye out for that follow-up email. We'll be providing links to helpful resources, and we'll also include a list of our upcoming virtual events. And next week's presentation is on collaborative divorce advanced topics with guest speakers Carrie Heinzel and Jarrett Johnston. And if you are interested in that, registration is now open, and I'll make sure to include that in the email tomorrow. So we just want to thank you again, once again, for joining us today, and we hope you all have a wonderful day.
1 o'clock on the dial. Perfect, Shannon. Have a great day. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.